Oh, we're just getting there. So we're having a little pre-convo, which is always great. People love it, like in the video anyway.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, that's neat. So I guess you don't have to worry about if you're gonna sell this month or sell that particular one.
No, it's a there are not many astrology magazines around, but I've also got loads of clients as well, and so I'm busy. I'm busy,
Oh my gosh. Well, what a joy, right? Like to
and
be
being yeah, I do media astrology as well, much to the chagrin of many of the professional astrologers who think that it's all harlotry, you know.
I love you. All right, everybody, welcome to today's Eat and Greet, where we're starting off early here in the United States, but that's because we have our friend from across the pond to visit.
Oh,
So we've got to
hello,
work it out.
Storm.
Yes,
So
welcome.
I'm on the
Good
south.
morning.
I'm on the south coast of England. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's dark already, and it's raining.
Well, who cares? You're in the palace.
I'm in your sun now. I'm in your sun. I can feel the heat.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to have each of you here today too. And hopefully, in this next hour, we will give you something that is worth the time you took to show up. Hopefully, you have your snacks or your beverages, whatever you've brought this morning. I'd love to hear about that in the chat section down below. And today, we're going to take an exploration of Draconic astrology, which I was fascinated to find out about, and it is really different than anything I've ever seen or practiced. I knew vaguely about it, but today we're going to get a pretty good introduction. And Victor, you're going to be our tour guide. How about that?
Yes, I'm going to sell it to you.
Yes. And
We're going to
speaking,
look perhaps at your own chart and see what
yes,
reveals about the inner Stormie. And is she as Stormy as her name?
yes, well, we shall see.
We shall see.
But speaking of selling things, you sell the astrological journal.
Yes, I've been editing it since 2014. I use social media with rampant disregard. I get locked into terrible fights with people. I don't care. I've got Uranus going over my Mercury at the moment for the next 2 years. So I've got license to be a very Lord of Misrule sort of person, you know?
Absolutely. And I can just tell you, you're an absolute hoot to follow online. I have too much Libra to engage, but I do watch and I'm like, oh, here's me online. Yeah,
A lot of people are like that.
it's
Uh,
absolutely
the
fabulous.
writing of yours very cautious, and you're very wise to be cautious.
I don't even know if it's genuine wisdom or if I'm just like, I prefer to eye guzzle than engage, but
Well,
whichever.
I like guzzling. I like guzzling, and I actually like locking horns with people. I don't look for trouble, but trouble comes and finds me. But I see it off, and nobody gets the better of me. Not yet. Call it hubris, but all those critics out there, all those deniers, I take them on, including the Spectator magazine, including radio shows, and all the rest of it.
So, how did you get into astrology? How did we get into the locking horns of the
A lot
cosmos?
of astrologers wondered about that. They think, how on earth do we end up with him? And but I actually, Stormy, unlike many astrologers, I actually came to it very late. I was 50 years old before I started studying it. But once I started, because before that I was a mainstream journalist. I spent
Oh,
celebrity interviews. I did the Cannes Film Festival for many years, many film festivals. So my background couldn't be less suitable for astrology than if you tried. But then I was always interested in symbols, the power of symbols, and it was that which brought me into the subject. And then when I lost my last job, I was made redundant and I was given a lovely amount of money. And I took out 2 years of my life and studied full time for a diploma in natal and mundane astrology.
wow. Where did you study?
The Mayo School of Astrology in London, although it's a correspondence. And I studied for the certificate originally and then the diploma with Wendy Stacey, who's the chair of the Astrological Association. It's not what you know, but who you know. But she may have had a hand in my appointment as editor of the Astrological Journal because she knew my background. She knows that I write like an angel, I edit like the demon, and I know how to put a magazine together. And I think I'm fairly good at astrology.
Yeah.
I'm always learning. I'm still learning, you know. You're well ahead of me. Frank C. Clifford has been studying and practicing astrology since he was 15.
Yeah.
And
we had Frank over.
so with him, I mean, he's got Virgo moon as well. Mine's in Pisces. So I'm always learning from him about being accurate, being a data freak. And these are not natural impulses in me.
Wow. So you've spun it, though, into something wonderful and something that you're happy with and that is useful to not only you, but the community as well.
It works, Stormie, it works. And in my client work, I don't actually do one-to-ones as a rule. Most of my reports are blind reports. I don't know who my clients are. I don't know whether they're married. I don't know whether they're from Venus. I don't know whether they're from Mars. And of course, it's very interesting when you do this and you get the feedback that it's very positive. How do you know this? Are you a wizard? Blah, blah, blah. And I say, no, I'm just a silly old astrologer, you know, and this, if you apply the rules of astrology, don't be amazed that it works. But people are amazed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't tell you how often I hear, are you a wizard? Like not once ever.
Not a witch, not a witch. Someone called me a witch recently, and I thought, well, yeah, why not?
Sure. Maybe a little.
A glass of water, by the way.
Oh, this morning, because it's a morning eat and greet over here, I've got green tea with purple protein powder. There we go.
That's wonderful. That's just, I don't know how you do it.
It's probably because I'm not a wizard.
I had a Zoom party last night, so I'm a little bit hungover.
A Zoom party?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I'll have off-camera questions. Okay, let's get into this. So Draconic Astrology. Now, I don't know a ton about it, but what I do know and what I researched a little bit is it's quite ancient. Like this is not new. It's just kind of had a revival in this last, 4 or 5 years? Or has it been longer?
It's interesting. It's thought to be from ancient Babylon. Although I'm actually thinking of writing a book at the moment, and I'm doing the research because I noticed not much research has been done on the origins of Draconic. Sure. It's little known. It was actually brought to Britain back in the 70s by a guy called Dennis Elwell, who's passed since, but he was a well-known thinker and writer, journalist too, funnily enough. He sort of introduced, and then the definitive book is by someone called Pam Crane, who wrote the Draconic chart. And the great thing being editor of the Astrological Journal is I get a lot of ideas and I get introduced to new approaches. As you know yourself, there are so many different techniques and systems. Yeah. Astrology is a rich subject. And Draconic sets itself the purpose of identifying your spiritual or life themes, and it presupposes past life. I don't personally know what to make of reincarnation or past lives, but for the purposes of Draconic, I will refer to past lives. I mean, if I think about your chart at the moment, there's the suggestion in your chart that you've done a lot of good in the past life and you've come for your rewards in this life.
Ugh.
You like that?
Who doesn't like that? Is there somebody out there who's like, oh, keep the rewards, keep the reward? I haven't arrived at that level of humility.
I like that. Don't change. Don't change. And having looked at your chart, I don't see you changing much.
I don't. It'll take an act of God, I'm sure.
Not with that Taurus sun of yours. But even your draconic sun is in Capricorn, so that it's elevated to the cardinal.
Yeah. Well,
Cardinal Stormie.
So what's the difference then when we're looking at a tropical natal chart versus the draconic?
They're both birth charts. That's the first thing. So they're not alternative. Some people try to use the draconic chart if they don't like what they see in the tropical chart. But what you do with the draconic chart, you take the North Node, which in mainstream astrology tends to represent the challenge that we come into this life to deal with. We could spend the rest of the show talking about the North Node. And what you do is you move the North Node. To create the chart, you move the North Node from where it is in your natal chart to 0 degrees Aries, which is the start of life, if you think about it, in the vernal equinox and everything. Now, and the degree to which the distance between the natal and the 0 degrees Aries, the arc or the number of degrees, you apply the same number of degrees to all the other planets and points in the chart, shift them, but you don't actually shift the houses. So if you've got Mars in the first house, or moon in second equal house in your case, then it stays in that house. But the sign will change and the degrees will change. How much they change will depend on the distance between the natal position and the newly draconic. And then you analyze the modalities, the elements of each, and you'll see little hints. Where are we going? In your case, it's like you've got quite a cardinal chart already, but the main feature of your chart is air. Air becomes very prominent in your life about communication, dispassion, use of the intellect, those sort of associations that you know. And what you do is you look at the two charts and then you put them into a synastry or comparison chart. Voila, you've got new aspects. And that's where you see a message about your life purpose or the spiritual purpose, and some spiritual purposes are very heavy. Yours, interestingly, yes, there are huge challenges, but I wouldn't describe them, except in one particular, as heavy.
And which area is that?
Maybe something to do with relationships. Because your two tropical Venus, Mars planets are in detriment, as you know. But interestingly, in your draconic synastry, or let's say comparison chart might be the better word, you'll find that the North Node and the South Node are exactly conjunct Venus and Mars. Exact. If that's not a clue to one of your life purposes, I don't know what is. But if you can look at your chart shortly or whenever you want. But to say a bit more about the draconic chart, the interesting thing is some people immediately recognize themselves because they're actually in tune with themselves. And I suspect that you fall into that category. But some people say, are you mad? Are you crazy? But most people have a sense in their heart about their instincts, about what they love, what they hate. And these will also be clues as to your life purpose.
Wow. So if someone is just getting started, or maybe they've been practicing for a while and they want to pull a draconic chart, do you have to have Astro software to do it? Or is this something that you can you pull it at astro.com? Do you know?
Yes, astro.com has a draconic option in its zodiac menu. And so you can, and if you've got solar fire, you can just go to the, I think it's called Zodiac, or anyway, you'll find it's a draconic. Actually, solar fire is better because you can easily create the two charts. Okay. And then you've got the comparison. Also, you've got instant reports on the modalities, the elements, chart shaping, and various other things, like midpoints as well. You can do midpoints with draconic. You can do horary with draconic. You can do electionals. You can do progressions, directions. I mean, I've just done Donald Trump's solar return. That involves the draconic birth chart and the draconic transits. And guess what? It doesn't answer the question whether he loses the election, but it's virtually all Aries. I wouldn't say that's consistent with re-election, you see. That's consistent with a whole new life opening up in his 10th house.
Right.
So
a whole new career. The
draconic chart gives you a different message. It doesn't necessarily answer your question. It indicates another terrain, and that's your answer. So you can answer Donald Trump wants to hear, but Aries is his sign at the moment, draconically.
That is fascinating. So if someone is stuck, if they're like, I've looked at my natal chart, I've looked at 1,000 times, you could jump technique and maybe get moving again.
Yes, I do think, and you'll know this as an astrologer yourself, astrology doesn't work by diktat, it works by recognition. In other words, if the client doesn't recognize the basic truth of what you're saying, you may as well give a reading to a vase. And so you don't want to be telling people what to think or do, because then you've got to take responsibility, particularly in people who are susceptible or are looking to shift responsibility if things go wrong. So if my website, victoroliver.co.uk, got that in very quickly. I did say I was a hustler.
And if you have any names to drop, we welcome.
Okay. I have a very extensive legal notice which explains what astrology can and cannot do, and what my responsibility is as an astrologer, and also what you're paying for. And you're not paying for certainties of outcome, because you're playing a part in your own play here. It's not like I'm giving or you're giving a script to anybody. So when you come to, a lot of people come to me who are quite successful already, but they still don't know what they're about. They still don't know what their life purpose is. And it's almost as if they feel that the thing that was the most successful thing actually does not fulfill them. Look at Hedy Lamarr, for example, the old Hollywood glamour queen of the 30s and 40s. Not many people realize, not only was she one of the most beautiful women in the world, but she was also a fantastic scientist. Her science inventions were precursors to Wi-Fi, global positioning systems. The fact that we're talking to each other today, Stormie, is partly thanks to Hedy Lamarr. And if you look at her draconic chart, you've got a separation between Neptune, Moon, glamour in Leo, and then you've got Aquarius and Jupiter you've got Uranus and Jupiter in Aquarius. So you've got this dichotomy in her chart already expressed, North Node bang on top.
Wow.
And if that's not an indication of life purpose, that science was actually one of her big life purposes, and she had no science background, no education.
Yeah, I think, as we have just discussed when we were doing our interview and then discussed a little bit about the one that you're going to share, I almost had this sense of not really needing all of the study, but more so being called back to something. Like I just innately know how to move through some of the things that are indicated in that Draconic chart. And I wonder if that would have been an explanation she would have had without a lot of science study, feeling just a natural ease to move in and within it. Do you find that?
If you think about it, it falls very nicely into the idea, the theory, well, no, not theory, it's not the right word. Should we say the speculation or the belief of reincarnation, that we reincarnate with innate instincts and memories? Instinct is basically memory, isn't it? I think so. In your case, for example, you Jupiter on the North Node in Cancer is very interesting. That. Should we put up your chart? Should we have a look?
Yes. Okay, let's see it. Oh, it's chart time, guys. I'm in the hot seat. We're about to see what's really going on.
Now, do you mind if I keep it like that, or do you want me to broaden it? Do you want me to broaden it?
No, I think that looks okay. You guys in the chat, let me know if we need to make that bigger or if you can see what's going on. So we'll know in just a few minutes.
Okay. Well, the thing is that don't worry about the words, because I'm not going to read it all out. I warned Stormie before this interview that I'd only talk in headlines, but I was talking about Stormie's draconic Jupiter. Jupiter is in the 11th house in Cancer, nicely conjunct. I mean, we allow normal orbs for a birth chart. You can go over 3, 4, 5 degrees. So it's conjunct the tropical North Node and widely opposite the tropical part of Fortune.
Oh, Victor, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
Just to be clear, if you're watching and you're kind of new, what we're looking at is this is a biwheel. So my birth chart is what's on the inside. Now, to formulate it into the Draconic method, the node has been moved to Aries. And then the rest of the chart is calculated around it and then laid over my chart to see what the synastry is. So in case you're new, that's what you're looking at. Okay, I'm out.
Thank you for that explanation. I should have said it myself.
Lifeguard on duty.
I'm just a tourist here. But Jupiter, of course, is munificent. It loves being in Cancer. And a reincarnationist would say to you, Stormie, that you've come into this life with a load of preset talents and you're just picking up where you left off, because it knocks into your, admittedly, these are wide aspects, but they work for our purposes. And what it tells me about you is that it's a very material aspect. Cancer loves money, but also with Jupiter in the 11th house, we're talking about independence in business. The 11th house can also apply to the proceeds of business, as you know. It also has aspects to do with interconnectedness, with humanitarianism, that sort of stuff. But it's interesting that Cancer is brought to the 11th house on the nodal axis, bringing in the part of Fortune. And of course, it has you as the star. That's the first indication that this is very much a need in you, an instinct for material and business independence. That's part of your life theme. It's part of the fulfillment. Some people think it's just about spiritual purposes, but there can be material purpose. What if you're born with the talent to play the violin? Talking about talents, look at the ascendant point. The Draco ascendant, the AS there, falls on your sun in Taurus, which of course is the sign of the voice. And the ninth house is broadly related to broadcasting, publishing, also to dissemination, to higher teachings, higher thoughts, that sort of stuff. It's quite basic astrology, this, you know. And it's also quite interesting down here. Have a look. The Draconic fortune is actually generally conjunct all your Libra planets. This takes us to another theme of your life. There's quite a focus, and I don't know to what extent you can recognize this or you'll fess up, but relationships, negotiation, diplomacy seems to be a very strong factor in your life. You get that from the tropical chart. It seems to be supported by your part of fortune. But interestingly, when you look at your birth tropical chart, you've got Venus and Mars in opposition. Quite fascinating, this. In their detriment, we say that Venus in Aries is detriment. That's a bit of an old term. I don't necessarily go with all the ideas of that. But it does suggest that this seems to be a challenging area either to learn from or to teach, because look, your Draconic North Node at 0 degrees Aries falls exactly on your Venus in Aries, opposite Mars. So this tells me that there may be something in your life or maybe in your work life, only you can tell, that has to do with understanding the nature of conflicts or the nature of the dynamics of relationship, because it also falls across the 1st and 7th houses. This is the equal house. I mean, if you do Placidus, you might get different houses, but I usually use equal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Relationships are the story. That's probably my favorite area to study in everything. And it is literally how I got into astrology. I called into a radio show over a decade ago to answer a question about relationships, because the way they were talking about it was so passionately disengaged from giving a shit about other human beings that I called in to say, there's another way. They offered me a job. I spent a decade in radio, which trained me to come here into astrology.
That's an amazing story. That's an amazing story. And it's interesting too, you talk about radio. Well, as I said to you earlier, look at this. So the cardinality is fairly well represented in both charts, actually. It's not a major issue with you. I mean, there's no question you've got get up and go. But air, the biggest drama in your Draconic chart is that it becomes very heavily airy, which is to do with communication, to do with relating to people, say at a dispassionate level. I mean, you can be personally involved with people, you can care for them, but I think air also detaches to some extent because you've got to keep your brain turning. You can't just use your heart. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, just as a final point, is that your sun is in Taurus, as you know, but in the Draconic chart, it does go into the cardinal earth sign of Capricorn. So it is your lot not only to set up independently your own business and become in effect an empire, because I relate this axis with passion, with expansion and growth and all that stuff, but also that you're the star of it. And you've got that indicated with your ascendant on your sun as well. So there are a number of indications here of the strength of your personality.
Set up an empire.
But I'm not going to go into it in a public domain.
Well, I'm certainly on board with set up the empire business, but also remember to engage at a heart level relationships, not just stay in the air. It's a real practice.
Hey, look, Venus in Aries. Fire, fire, fire.
I know.
Not indifferent. That's not indifference. Shall I stop the share now?
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you, I love that the Draconic North Node is there though, because I'm like, yeah, I think once people, whether it's in person or even online, finally engage me, I'm like, boom, like, here's my love. It's like on you.
I'm still in shock. I caught your interview with Frank and I said, is she for real? Is it satire? And then after a while, I got into it because It was up, it was so up.
Yeah. I know. Well, and it was fun to interview with Frank because kind of going in, I had seen our synastry as well, which is, interesting in and of itself. But I was like, okay, I'm going to just come on in here with it. And then it did. It hit some up, which I thought was beautiful in the end.
He's an Aries himself too, so that would engage immediately.
Yeah, I know.
Rising too. Gemini rising, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. And then we had I think he has a Virgo moon. I think that's the place that his moon on my ascendant is what ended up
It's
happening.
the place that annoys me most about him, because he's always correcting me and saying, I think you meant the 3rd degree, Victor, not the 2nd, and things like that. There's a wild side to him, but then he's got this awful pedantry too, which you need in astrology.
Yeah.
You've got to care about the data. He calls himself a data freak.
Yeah, well, check
Going
it.
back to Lois Rodden and people like that. She was a data freak as well.
That's brilliant. I would love to see Frank's Draconic chart. I'll have to look it up.
Maybe I will have a look.
Now we'll all be curious, right?
But
so
if he doesn't have Jupiter in a key point, I'm forgetting about Draconic. I'm forgetting. I set challenges all the time. I don't cherry pick charts. I mean, I've been giving talks all over the world on Draconic, and I'm telling you now, on my dead cat's life, that I do not cherry pick charts. I say Greta Thunberg. Oh, she's got Draconic Jupiter on the North Node, bit like you. Donald Trump, all Aries in his Draconic chart. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So if you use Draconic in a mundane way, how does that change the explanation? Because with the person, it can feel like that soul calling, but does it translate the same in mundane astrology?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I use a multi-layered approach. In other words, I'm quite happy to turn the natal chart and even the Draconic chart into a kind of improvised mundane chart as well, particularly where you know that the subject is a politician, or if you're dealing with a country. I mean, I've not actually done any Draconic national charts yet, but I'm working towards that. Because frankly, with 1 or 2 exceptions, if you can do it in tropical or even sidereal, you can do it in Draconic. And it is an underestimated technique, because there are very few techniques where I have seen with uncherry picked, or cherry unpicked, I should say, charts. I've never seen such an abundant, and it's not a question of seeing patterns in clouds, which is what some skeptics say about astrology. If you look at your chart, for example, there is a very strong indication of a very strong business impulse in you. And that's so strongly indicated, along with the relationship dynamic and 1 or 2 other things. These are not made up aspects, and they're very acute as well. Talking about Donald Trump, for example, when I did his Draconic, I mean, and one thing to bear in mind about Draconic solar return, that's the Draconic solar return that I did for 2020, because it's June I think his 14th, something like that, his birthday. But his Draconic birthday is June the 22nd. And that's when the sun is exactly conjunct his sun. You have to use sometimes the help of a Draconic ephemeris for this to find out the approximates, and then you can refine it in the software. But when you do the solar return for Donald Trump, you'll see that up the top in the 10th house, which is the house of government, politics, and he is the president still, it's all Aries. And so it's not so much a question of will he win the election. If he's seeking more of the same, you don't go for Aries, do you? So you get an answer in a roundabout way, that way. So you've got, in one sense, his life direction, but in another sense, his power, which is going in a new area.
Yeah. I'm actually quite interested to see what he will do next and what comes into it, because if nothing else, forgetting about the personality of the person, just thinking energetically about the chart, it's learned a lot in this last few years. There's a lot of learning and new perspectives and new kind of mountaintops that he's seen information and systems from. And if nothing else, looking at the man's just regular old natal chart, that he is abuzz with movement and understanding the dynamic of power and how to create and shift those things. So I'll be interested truly to see what he does next with all of that Aries Draconic energy.
A lot of Aries, the Gemini, as you know, shifts to Aries actually in his Draconic chart as well, but it shifts over to the 7th, 8th sort of area of the chart. And it doesn't immediately tell you what he's up to next. I mean, we've heard stories about a media empire and all that, or maybe he's running in 2024. I don't see that myself. I mean, I examined the election from 4 tropical systems perspectives, directions, solar returns, things like that, and they all suggest waning power.
Yeah.
And so I don't see, even if he does run in 2024, I don't think he's going to get anywhere. But the question you ask is an intriguing one, and I think that requires a different type of approach. You're not necessarily going to get an answer from the Draconic chart on that one.
Sure.
He may stay in the area of politics because his Aries in the Draconic solar return is still in the 10th house.
Sure, and it's who you know.
It's who you know, and he knows himself very well.
He knows himself very well, and if nothing else, you become the president of anything, but certainly a country, and you are going to have conversations and meet people that you wouldn't normally meet doing fill in the blank thing.
In his Draconic chart, Uranus in Gemini is then shifted to Pisces in the 7th house. That's interesting. And I think the clue to an answer lies in that direction. But I've not quite worked out yet what that means. You see, I'm not afraid to say it. I don't know.
Right.
Very interesting that the chart sometimes drops clues as to purpose. So whereas he's got all this dynamic Gemini Aries from the tropical Draconic point of view, suddenly he slips into Pisces. So there's a hint here of a more diffused energy, something potentially more elevated, which then begs the question, do we sometimes disappoint ourselves? We may identify the life purposes, but are we really living up to those life purposes?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about, is like, you can know it, I mean, or have something revealed, and it'll even create the twinge of, yes, I know this, but are we doing it and stepping into that? So any guidance towards some action towards those things, I think, is really great, huh?
Well, it's wonderful when people consult you. It can be frustrating, but sometimes you don't know the outcome because people dip into your life and then they leave. And people are amazingly bad at getting in touch, to say thank you. Particularly the earth signs, hint, hint. But on the other hand, I've had so much evidence through my own life too. I mean, my mother died about 2 years ago, and the Draconics on that, involving the moon, Neptune, and the solar eclipse of 6 January 2019, is astonishing. It's epic, actually. It's an epic narrative. Epic narrative.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, so in I know this is sometimes dangerous territory, but so in the Draconic chart, looking energetically at it, can we see more of those moments of death or swift loss?
The interesting thing in my chart is that the Draconic birth chart is at around 10 degrees Pisces, 11 degrees Pisces. When the tropical Neptune reached that point in Pisces, my mother went into a slow decline. And I remember saying to Frank, years before it actually hit my moon, the tropical moon, because it's Neptune on moon we're talking about, Neptune being lost, the moon being the mother. I said to Frank, I bet my mum dies when Neptune hits my moon. And that's precisely what happened. But the interesting thing, Stormie, is that it was foretold, in a sense, by the position of the tropical Neptune. Sorry, I'm getting confused. By the Draconic birth Neptune. And when it got hit by trine of the Draconic transit and the tropical Neptune transit, opposite the solar eclipse in Draconic Virgo. So it wasn't so much that I could say to you, this means undiluted death, but it was a strong indication, especially with the solar eclipse, I should say. You can tell I went to a party last night on Zoom. With the solar eclipse, which in traditional astrology tends to have negative associations, as you know. In tropical, it was in Capricorn, but in the Draconic, it was in Virgo, opposite the 2 Neptunes and the moon.
Okay.
So death, I think, has its own signature according to your life.
Yeah, we will actually have Nia over, and we're going to explore a little bit of death charts, which is really interesting because we talk about people, like we never explore the moment of their deaths. Like, and those are significant charts. Like Marilyn Monroe's death chart is like the signature of her birth chart, is, so we'll explore a little bit of how we see those energies as well. So I would be interested, the Draconic perspective of what that looks like as well. Now we do have a question for you. When you pull your Draconic chart, can you create a progressed Draconic chart?
Yes, you can. You can. If you can do it in the tropical system, with one or two little exceptions, with some of the more obscure midpoint systems, but generally speaking, you can apply Draconic to any system you like. But you have to apply the rules. So going back to the solar return for a moment, some people transfer the tropical solar return into a Draconic and that's their two charts. But you've got to use the Draconic birth chart and then use the Draconic transits.
Okay. Yeah. So you can't like jump the track.
That's the trick.
Right. You got to stay somewhere along the same track, right?
Yes.
They're all trains, but they are going someplace different.
I am planning to write an introductory book to Draconic Astrology because, quite frankly, the creation of a Draconic chart is very straightforward. It's you can do it manually, actually, but interpretation is more tricky. And so I'm going to be laying out some ground rules and giving lots and lots of examples from celebrity charts. And I shall doubtless be asking for your permission to use your chart, because you'll be even more famous by the time the book is done.
Hopefully not infamous, right? Sweet line.
Possibly. Considering the charts, maybe.
Brilliant. Well, any last thoughts to have us prepared to go kind of look at Draconic charts?
Well, let's see. Don't go into Draconic Astrology if you don't want to know yourself. But the strange thing about astrology is that I don't know about you, but it's usually based on a huge self-curiosity to start with.
Yeah.
And so the egotists.
Yeah, they're not interested.
No, they're not interested. I think, it's one of the big questions we all ask ourselves at some point. Not only do we ask, why are we here as a species, but what's my purpose? And most people have an instinct to be of use, even people who are useless. Although I've never met a useless person, just as I've never met a boring person. Who are these boring people?
Right, where do they live?
Why is it supposed that anyone's supposed to be entertaining you? These are the suppositions that I've tried to shift from my life. And as a journalist, it's been quite useful because I've always been interested in asking questions. And in other words, I'm a nosy Parker, as we say in England.
I must be nosy Parker's greatest friend then. I'll be there filming what's happening for us with a snack.
Well, that would be just great. If you're doing the narration with that Taurus voice of yours, it's just going to be great.
I know. My daughter said the other day, Mom, I don't know why you don't do more TikTok videos. I'm like, oh, Christ. I don't even know where to go with that. But narrating TikTok videos or anything else, just who knows?
I don't know. I'm just trying to get the point of TikTok at the moment. I see these strange videos and I think, oh, God, these young people today. And but I love I do my own videos. I mean, I'm also known as the beach bum astrologer because I've got the beach here. So we had a long summer this year for a change. So I went on the beach each day and I'd record maybe 5 minutes talking about an eclipse or a full moon or an ingress or something like that. And people would tune in just to look at the scenery. Yeah. Some people said, can you move so you get out of the way? Because I want to see the sea.
You're like, so I guess this will be like a narration while you're looking at the beach.
I didn't take it personally, by the way. I'm far too elevated these days to take offense.
Well, I mean, you're in the palace. I mean, what are you?
Beat that.
Oh my gosh. Well, Victor, thank you so much for coming over and talking about this and showing a little bit of example. I have found it fascinating. Even in the weekly where I was getting ready for you to come, I'm like, you guys, it's like a kind of a jaw drop when you see your Draconic chart. It's a different system and experience, at least it was for me. And the inkling of knowing shows up in it. That's like, yeah, that's the thing. I have known that, whether or not I've been using it.
Well, you've got a long life ahead to find out. But you seem to be on the right lines. You seem to be on the right lines.
I sure hope so. And I'm sure I'll be coming to you and I'll be like, Victor, I don't know what to do with my life. I mean, give it 6 months.
No, I don't think so. I'm quite confident that you won't be coming to me with that question.
Okay. So how can we find you?
Well, I've got my website. It's Olliver double L, by the way. I'm not Oliver Twist, so it's victoroliver.co.uk. And I always encourage people to shop around. I'm one of these few astrologers who actually prices my services. So, and you just click an option if you want to do that. Or there's plenty to read. You can look at the videos too. I think there's an interview with me somewhere there. It's quite a large website. But yeah, victoroliver.co.uk. And there we are, and I'm very, very open about my pricing, what you're paying for. It's not a science, at least I don't think so. But some people try to make out that it is. But if you go down that road, you're heading for a fall as an astrologer, because you're going to fail when someone says, well, prove it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basic logic.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I've done a lot of radio interviews this year. And the standard question was, but a lot of astrologers say it's a science. And I say, no, it's not a science. Therefore, it can't be a pseudoscience. If you look at Wikipedia's definition of astrology, it's full of nonsense by moralists wearing beards, telling you that it's a pseudoscience. But as I say to them routinely, it can't be a pseudoscience because it's not a science. It doesn't claim to be a science. It's a divinatory tool that has correlations. You can demonstrate the proof of it through your chart. But try to explain why it's working. Well, you may have your ideas, but you can't weigh and measure them or put them up over a Bunsen burner.
Sure, sure. But somebody is looking to prove it. And I look forward to reading that article and work.
I get essays every week saying, I have found the proof that it's a science. And you read it. Harmonics, people that practice harmonics love to tell me about their scientific discoveries. But at some point, there's a slight problem, and it is called myth. The point. and because, and if you can show me the science of a myth, I'm all yours.
So I'll see you in the eternal hornlock later on Twitter.
Yeah, getting blocked again.
Have you been to Twitter jail?
No, I've never been in Twitter jail, but maybe I've been told off.
Once or twice, huh?
I've got a bit of a temper, but I'm trying to control that side. I just get a bit cross sometimes, But I like lively engagement. I don't care if people insult me. I thrive on it. I don't take it personally. People come up with the most horrible insults, and I say, yeah, okay, whatever,
Yeah, but that's a very specific kind of person and personality, right? Like you are built for it. So, but that's probably, I mean, throughout your life, we could probably see the consistency of how you've been so successful with what you've been doing in all of the communication realms. I mean, you gotta have tough skin to get out there and be around celebrities, to do that kind of work, to use your words, your big kid words.
I survived Elizabeth Taylor 3 times. This liar ever came across. Talk about liars. And my moon's in Pisces, by the way. Each time was a nightmare. And if you can survive Dame Elizabeth Taylor, R.I.P., you can survive anything.
Brilliant. Oh my God, Victor, thank you for coming over.
A pleasure. It's been a great pleasure.
I think that hopefully, I mean, I'm seeing lots of laughter in the chat. They just love you. You're definitely invited back. So the soulmate family approves of Victor.
Well, I love you all. don't necessarily take that literally. I'm quite an old person now.
Keep it at arm's length.
Oh, I'm a media tart.
A media tart. I cannot.
Media tart. And I used to have a blogging personality called Madame Arcati.
Wow.
It's from a Noel Coward play called Blithe Spirit. But that's another story. I'll tell you about that another time.
Well, when we have you back, you can lay and unfold and unpack that situation for us.
The horrible sequel.
I don't think so at all. All right, my beautiful friends. Thank you so much for taking time.
All my love to America.
Oh, thank you. We
Great ahead time, your Pluto return. Whee! That's going to be fun. And
yes, we need it. Send all of your love.
Can I ask you one question? How do you pronounce, is it Kamala or Kamala Harris? How do
Kamala.
Kamala. Because
Kamala.
people think Kamala and it didn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, as far as I've heard it pronounced.
I thought it was Kamala. Her chart is fascinating. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying her chart is fascinating.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yes.
Okay, people want to know.
Victor Olliver channel. Victor Olliver channel.
Victor Olliver.
There. Loads of videos. You can see me on the beach. People saying, "Get out of the way. I want to see the seagulls." Shut up.
Yeah, so you're getting some interaction below those videos is what's happening, right?
Lots of insults. I don't delete them. I actually cherish them. I cherish them.
Okay, so this is a great moment before we wrap up here, where this guy on YouTube at the beginning of his videos, he says, if you're new to the channel, you like this content, like, comment, share, subscribe, notification bell so you know when things come out. Very common intro, right? And he said, and if you's a hater, make sure you hit the notification bell so you can leave the first hate comment on my videos. And I thought, well, damn, that's good.
That's it's great style. Great
yeah.
style. And I encourage astrologers, by the way, you can't get rid of me. You're going to have to get an exorcist in. But I encourage astrologers to grow horns. Don't just let people get away with a lot of old nonsense, particularly in the mainstream media. And I make life misery. I'm not a troll. Well, not much of a troll. But if I hear a put down of astrology on some of the mainstream shows, TV or radio, I immediately contact them.
Victor, an active guardian of our astrology.
But you're a huge, wonderful person, I must say, wonderful personality. This is not a mutual admiration society thing, by the way, folks. But I think this show should be on one of the mainstream channels, and I think someone should start a petition.
So if anyone wants to start a petition.
Donald Trump may be looking for stars on Trump TV, but I don't know whether he can lure you in.
Do you know, oh my God, that is so odd that you're saying that, because I had a moment in meditation where I was like, I wonder what my interaction with that man is, which is a real whole interesting situation. But anyway, all right, you guys, hopefully in this last hour, we gave you something that was worth the time you took to show up. I look forward to having you check out the calendar so you can see when all the rest of the guests are coming. It's just on the homepage at stormiegrace.com. I also put the link in the chat in case you need it, and you'll also be able to find it now below the description box. So thank you again so much, Victor.
Pleasure. A great pleasure talking with you.
You too. And we'll have you over again soon because this was wildly wonderful. And I would love to hear some other perspectives. So
from the palace. From the palace.
From the palace. All right, everybody. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. And I will see you.